Hi. Once again, thank you very much for making the time.
Eric, I'm
Uh,
delighted to be here. Thanks for having me.
you're going to Comic Con this week, right?
Yeah, I am. My first time.
Oh, your first time. Wow.
I've been to many conventions, but
Yeah.
San Diego Comic Con is uh, a different beast entirely, as I understand it.
I cover conventions all over the world, and there's nothing like San Diego Comic Con.
Okay, so the biggest I think I've been to is I think probably Fan Expo Toronto is
I've been
probably the
there too.
largest. That's a big
Yeah.
con.
That's a good show. Yeah. Yeah. This is just, I mean, it takes over the whole city. All of San Diego is Comic Con for the week. So
Well,
I
I'm
hope, I
looking.
hope you have a lot of fun. I'm sure you have a crazy schedule.
It's pretty intense. I've got a whole list of things, and I'm just, I've never been very good at the prom, so
Uh,
I'm working really hard at centering myself and making sure I can keep my head on straight.
Yeah, yeah, it's intense. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I think you're gonna be impressed for sure.
I can't wait. I'm so excited about it. I'm so looking forward to it. And
What?
Lionsgate has got some big Borderlands stuff in store, so I just can't wait to see everything they've cooked up.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about Borderlands. Did you have any kind of connection to Borderlands before the movie came along at all?
Other than the fact that I was aware of it,
Yeah.
the enormity of the property, and I had been aware in sort of an industry way that the Eli was signed on to make the movie. I knew that the film was
Hmm.
was happening, but I
Gotcha.
did not. I was a full on noob to the lore and the
Yeah.
gameplay when I first auditioned for Marcus.
Okay. What was it about Marcus then? What was your what drew you into that role?
It's funny. I remember getting the audition and looking at the sides, and I was like, "This feels like something I could do." I really
Hmm.
hope the guy looks like me. And then I went and I found some artwork of him, and I was like, "Okay, I think I
Yeah.
might be able to make that happen." I hope he sounds like me. And I went and I listened for the first time of many, many, many times of listening to Bruce DuBose's magnificent work in the games, and I was like, okay, I think I might know him. I think I might be able to do something. And then, we were in lockdown, so I put a tape together for Eli and for Lionsgate, and spent about 3 days on it. And it was I knew the enormity of the opportunity, and I wanted to be equal to it. So there was a lot of
Hmm.
stress on it, and I put the tape together and sent it off, and waited about 2 weeks, and then it sounded good, and then it's when things go, they go quick, and so then I
Sure.
knew I booked, and I was in Budapest, I think 2 months later, with full lockdown. I had a giant beard, I had giant hair, and because they were going to use my hair to affect Marcus's pompadour and all that stuff,
Hmm.
and then within the first week, I had seen the amazing costume that Daniel Orlandi had made, which is just magnificent, and the makeup. I had a Hungarian dentist make me a gold tooth. I mean, we
Nice.
sorted it all out,
Yeah.
and then I was sitting in a bus on Pandora with Kate Blanchett. It's
Wow.
not the worst way to come out of lockdown.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, I know auditions. You never really know, and so many actors do so many. But I have to imagine with this one, you felt pretty confident when you saw Marcus and you heard him, and you're like, "This is me. I can do this." Right?
I knew I confident uh, is a foolhardy thing to have,
Fair enough.
particularly going into something as capricious as an audition.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Fair.
what I was confident I could do was I could deliver them something. I could show them what I could do,
Yeah.
and so I just I went after it, and It's funny. At that point, self tapes had become sort of the only thing you could do. So
Yeah.
I was getting enamored with it, and I had gotten very close right before lockdown on. I imagine I'm allowed to say I got very. They rebooted. They rebooted Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I got far enough that they had me in a leather face mask with a giant rubber
Wow.
chainsaw, and then that fell through. And then the next audition that I had, also on a self tape, was Marcus. But I had worked with a buddy, my dear friend Joe Hernandez Kolsky, who is usually the other side of my auditions, and we had put together the tape for Lionsgate, and I didn't feel comfortable with it. I didn't feel confident about it, and I did something I seldom do, which is I called Joe up and said, can we do it again? And I went back and we did it again, which is not a thing I'd recommend. Typically, I don't like to second guess, but as you pointed out, Eric, I mean, I was aware enough to know that this was not something that I wanted to have any. In an audition, there's not a lot under your control, but I didn't want to have any lingering thoughts that I had left something on the field. So I did another pass, and I'm very glad I did.
What was it, if you don't mind sharing? What made you second guess?
The spirit wasn't there. There was too much effort in the work. To be honest, you could just sort of see me trying. And Marcus is not a guy who tries, Marcus is a guy who is, and so I just wanted to, I just knew, like we had the time. I didn't want to pull the trigger on it. I trusted my gut. Joe had my back. He agreed that it wasn't quite there. And then we went, and I think I did one more pass the next day. And it was just like, okay, I'm comfortable with that. And and who knows? Maybe if I sent in the first one, it would have worked too. You don't know, but I was aware enough of the potential enormity of the project that I did not want to. I didn't want to have any regrets.
When I saw Marcus in the trailer, it's a brief moment in that trailer, but I immediately was like, "Oh my god!" They ripped him right out of the video game and put him into the movie. And it got me thinking about like your recently with Guardians of the Galaxy. That was such a huge transformation physically. Yeah. And I know you kind of just touched on this with the tooth and the costume and stuff, but this clearly was not as much of a transformation. But I'm just curious how much was Marcus just you, and how much went into becoming that character physically?
Oh, I think quite a. I hope the answer is both. I hope that it's me. In that, I hope that the work is honest. But in terms of transformation, I had hair extensions. I had the tooth. I had, at that point, I was going through a dental procedure, and I actually have a tooth that now has a crown on it that was a hole in his face that I brought up to Eli. I pitched it to him. I was like, I could have a missing tooth for the picture, and he thought it was a good idea. And so there's a big hole in his face too, and that people might think is CG, but it's just my bad teeth. But so there's always a lot of transformation. For me, it may sound cliche. But the shoes really make a big difference for me with any sort of character. And so I got there. We got the tooth sorted. We got the COVID protocols sorted, and then I went in and they shaved down the beard. They dyed the hair except for the temples, which is my gray hair, and then the rest of it is Marcus's brown hair. And then I got to put on. I had my first fitting of the costume that Daniel made, which is just extraordinary. Like all of the costumes on this film are just extraordinary, and just putting that on And that started bringing me really closer to the guy, and the sort of size of the guy. And when you're looking in the mirror, and this is true of Bleedle Snort as well, that when you've got these amazing sort of other craftspeople that are working on you, that are your allies in this work, whether it's Legacy Effects doing that amazing transformation, or the hair and makeup in Budapest doing Marcus, which was much closer to me. I mean, the biggest thing was the hair extensions, which yielded at the end of every day a very long shampoo, which was very, very nice way to end the day. But the character sort of came from that. And then there was the added wrinkle of having to learn how to drive Marcus's bus. And because it was such a particular thing, and because I was maybe one of only 3 people that were driving it, that also sort of added to feeling like I was finding this guy. And by the end, so that process began in March, and by when we finished in June, I could fall out of bed and know him. I got to know him, at least how he lives in me. I got to know him quite well.
The bus is interesting, isn't it? Kind of uncommon for actors to be actually driving the vehicles.
I don't know that it is uncommon. I did my own driving in Ant-Man and the Wasp, which was a surprise, by the way. I showed up in San Francisco, and I thought, there was this driving for Agent Burley, I think he was called, in the script, that I always assumed was either going to be on blue screen or was going to be on a picture car where, we were going to be mounted on a trailer. And Lars, our first AD, the day before, I've got to drive at high speeds down the streets of San Francisco, which, by the way, not a complaint. This was pretty amazing. But I said, "Oh, we're doing that for real. Why aren't we doing a picture car?" And he said, "Because of the hills, you can't do it because the horizon changes so much." So I don't know that it's unusual. I can say that you can put on my resume that I can hit a mark with a car. I can hit a mark. I can hit a mark with an SUV, and I can hit a mark with a Soviet era school bus. Is what I think Marcus's bus was. It does happen. It happens.
Yeah.
That.
Was that hard to get comfortable with? Marcus's?
Hard in the sense of it's not a traditional stick shift. It was sort of a 2-dimensional stick shift, and was very low to the ground. Easy in the sense that I'm in Budapest making a movie. What else do I have to do? It's what I was doing there.
Yeah.
So, and it was a delight. Although I think my big moment with the bus, I think the stunt driver is the one driving, because I was doing something with Randy Pitchford on that day. I think I was doing some DVD stuff, or I don't even. You don't call it DVD stuff anymore, I guess.
The special features.
Special features.
Yeah. How was Budapest?
It was amazing, but again, it was in lockdown. So there was a curfew. There was a curfew at 8 p.m. that we had special dispensation. But it was interesting. I got to know a lot of the staff that worked in the hotel we were staying in, and one of the things that they pointed to, because the protocols kind of loosened over the course of the shoot, and they were sort of making the point that normally in the sort of center of Budapest, most times of the year, it's filled with people from elsewhere. It's filled with tourists. And there was a neat thing that the staff was sort of pointing to, was that because it was so hard to get travel visas at that time, all of these spaces were actually filled with Hungarians. It was the home team in a way that it typically isn't. But I loved it there. I would love to go back. The people, the food, the history, the architecture, the Danube is beautiful. Buda Castle. I mean, just not a bad gig, man.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'd love to go there. Another thing I was thinking about, this is a little bit of a nebulous question, so I apologize, but you have done so much work with Rockstar and their projects their games are so cinematic. Um, and now this is a movie based on a game. And I guess I'm just curious from the actor point of view, this overlap between film and game and your experience working on games that are like movies and movies that are like games versus the work that you've done with film that has nothing to do with games. Do you have any insight there? Is there some common denominator or something that you've noticed about that particular experience?
Well, it's a hell of a storm to be in the middle of. It's a very interesting time, and I think as an actor, acting is ultimately acting. It ultimately just comes down to how well you understand the material and the connection that you are able to make with the other side of the scene, and that's ultimately, I think, the root of good acting. This is something else because it's you think certainly since the release of Red Dead 2, but I think there was talk of it with Red Dead, the first Red Dead Redemption, talk of it turning into another property, and at that point, video games did not have a very good track record, right? There Sure. was. But I also remember talking to folks at Rockstar about it, and I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth but my own. But the kind of consensus was that this thing is what it is. Why would you make a movie about it? It is communicating what it aims to communicate, and what utility is there in recapitulating it as a film. But then you see what Naughty Dog was able to achieve with Last of Us, and they're in the middle of it, right? And it's already so extraordinary. And I think I was watching an interview with Neil Druckmann, and he made the point, an amazing artist and he made the point in the interview that there's a whole audience that would never play Last of Us, but for. And so that's a pretty good argument. You're a gamer, I'm a gamer. I think you and I could have a discussion about does the climax of that first season mean something different if you're not the one with the controller in your hand?
Right.
And I think that's a pretty interesting conversation. But then you've got what Fallout has achieved, which is also pretty amazing, because what they did was they carved out a piece of the world that wasn't part of the games, and what it did was I think it served, or it seems to have served, as an ambassador to people that might not have played those video games to come and try them.
Yeah.
So I guess I think we're still figuring it out. The one thing that's encouraging to me, and one of the reasons why I'm taking there's no pains, but I'm making a point of bringing up Bruce DuBose whenever I talk about Marcus, is because of things that we're going to see. I mean, as great as Pedro Pascal, for example's work as Joel is, it ought never be forgotten that Troy Baker is the foundational actor for that role, as Bruce DuBose is the foundational actor for the role that I got to assume in Marcus. So I'm mindful of that. But I think ultimately, those of us that have understood for our whole lives how rich and extraordinary the stories that are told within video games are, there's a whole cohort of people that have no idea, that still think, it's Pac-Man and Defender or whatever. I mean, they can't wrap their heads around not just the tech, but the fact that, holy shit, pardon my French, but this is, Red Dead 2, that's a narrative that is building and extending tension in an interactive environment over 65 to 80 hours. And go try and do that again. I don't, but I do think that all of it taken together to me is an opportunity for the work of all sorts of artists, all sorts of craftspeople, all sorts of, whether they're writers, whether they're effects people, whether they're previs. I think that the merging of all of these fields and the kind of generative tension between the disciplines,
Mm-hmm.
I think all of it is good. I think all of it is good. And at the end of the day, anything that is advancing the utility and necessity of narrative fiction in our lives is something I'm happy to be a part of.
That was a very thoughtful answer to a very vague question. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I have given it some thought.
Have you thought about any other video game characters that you'd like to play in film?
It's a funny question. I'm just turned 52 in June,
Yeah.
and I, as a younger man, I would put targets on characters that I wanted to play. I think maybe it's Dutch. The fact that I got to spend so much time with Dutch, and he was so entirely everything I ever wanted, any of the character I ever got to play. Like he's so kind of in a lot of ways, in terms of my artistic ambition, I crossed a big finish line with him personally, in terms of being able to be a part of it. And honestly, what's left for me as I look at what I hope is a lot of work in front of me, is just the work itself, just getting better and better. So the character is of little concern to me. It's just the job. Because ultimately, the whatever the character that you're confronted with is, you're ultimately going to find a way to make it you. So I just, in my artistic life, my North Star has been for quite some time to work as much as I can and to improve every time I work. And that's pretty much it. And then the only thing that would, if there's one thing left on the list of things I'd like to do, he says to an indifferent universe, is to one day play a Klingon. would be
wow, okay.
a dream come true for me. I will throw that out there if the gods of wish fulfillment are listening. That is the one thing left from my early days of a to-do list. That I think is if it doesn't happen, I'm okay. I mean, I'm a pretty fortunate guy, and I'm grateful for everything that I've been lucky enough to be a part of.
If you will indulge me, just for fun, I have a couple fan casts that I think you are such a good fit for. Could I just get your reaction to these?
I'd be delighted. Yes.
All right. I got 4. Ganondorf from Zelda.
I would love that, but he doesn't talk, right? I mean, does he talk? Ganondorf, he starts as a dragon, or he starts as some kind of a monster. I mean, yeah, okay, sure. I mean, I think the animal work alone would be fun, and that would be a hell of a thing to be able to play in performance capture, because he's kind of, I'm remembering that right. He's like a shapeshifter, isn't he? He can.
Yeah.
That would be, yes. Okay. I'll take it. Yes, sign me up.
Dr. Light, the creator of Mega Man. He's like Mega Man's dad.
I know. I even have a Mega Man T-shirt. I've never played Mega Man, but I'll take it. Sure.
Zangief from Street Fighter.
I'm going to take that as a compliment.
It is. I assure you.
Okay.
And then the last one is Mr. X from Resident Evil, who also doesn't speak, but is a very terrifying figure in the video game world.
Listen, man, I'm all for. I like not having to speak, you know, and I think there was the part I played in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I kept giving his lines away. I didn't want him to have any lines. I thought it would be interesting. That's a longer story, but he ended up with lines. But But yeah, I'm all for a part that doesn't have to speak. Just speaking to somebody who had to spend, again, not complaining,
Yeah.
but 5 years of Dutch was a lot of years of pretty much by myself having to memorize a lot of dialogue
Yeah.
and a lot of monologues, which is one of the reasons why when it gets, as you have not, but when it gets called voice acting, it's one of the things that just look at.
Yeah.
There was so much memorization, and there were days in that role, particularly the early days before I started getting in the rhythm of his sort of syntax and language and all of it, where it was nail bitingly tense for me. I'd be up until 4 o'clock in the morning with a 7 a.m. call, just trying to get the shit stuck in there. So the idea of no lines, yeah, okay, that sounds like fun. I'm off book already.
All right. Well, I know that you shot this thing so long ago, so it must be nice that it's finally people are finally going to see it. You know.
It's funny. It's kind of it. Red Dead. We spent 5 years on. I couldn't talk about it until about 2 months before it came out.
Yeah. True. Yeah.
This is not quite 5 years, but I've for good or bad, I have become accustomed to waiting a very long time for my work to make it to the marketplace. But I trust that audience is going to find this really worth the wait. The cast is amazing and equal parts amazing and batshit crazy. I think that I trust we found the tone, and I think whatever else, it is mayhem and it is summer movie madness. And I am cautiously optimistic with a healthy dose of mild terror, knowing how fans can be about beloved properties. But I can tell you this with great certainty: everybody there was committed to delivering for the fans, and it was done with love.
Awesome, Benjamin. Thank you so much.
Hey,
I really
Eric,
enjoyed talking to you.
A real pleasure. Those are some great questions, and thank you so much for having me, man.